is your Jesus. We're going to be looking in Luke chapter 23. Luke chapter 23. Last two places I think people leave God. They don't take him everywhere. To me, they leave him like they leave him in the. I always forget in the stall. They leave him there. Then, he was born, he raised, but we're going to look at here on Luke chapter 23, verse 32. I'm just going to give you. I'm going to do this one a little different. But Luke chapter 23 and verse 32, and there were also two malefactors led with him to be put to death. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him and the malefactors, one on the right hand and one on the left. We're going to stop right here. We're going to go back and go through this chapter. But this is one place that you see a lot of people leaving their God. He's still hanging on a cross, and they put that cross up. You see pictures of so-called God hanging on the cross. That's not where my God stayed. He went there for me, but that's not where he stayed. And also another place, we're going to combine these two. Another place, if you look in Luke 24 and verse 1, and upon the first day of the week, early in the morning, they came unto the sepulchre, bringing the spices which they had prepared, and certain others with them. And they found the stone rolled away from the sepulchre, and they entered in and found not the body of the Lord Jesus. And it came to pass, as they were much perplexed, there behold, two men stood by them, shining garments, and as they were afraid, and bowed down their faces to the earth, they said unto them, Why seek ye the living among the dead? And he is not here, but is risen. Remember how he spake unto you when he was yet in Galilee, saying, The Son of Man must be delivered unto the hands of the sinful men, be crucified, and the third day raised again. And they remembered his words, and returned from the sepulchre, and told all things unto the 11, and to all the rest. This is another place. People celebrate his resurrection, but that's as far as they go. It amazes me because they don't remember why. Why was he put to death? Why was he risen? What was all this about? Well, we read this scripture, keep your place here in Luke, but in 1 Corinthians 15, I'll read this again. 1 Corinthians chapter 15. 1 Corinthians 15, starting verse 1. Moreover, brethren, I declare unto you the gospel which I preached unto you, which also ye have received, and wherein ye stand, by which also ye are saved, if ye be kept in memory what I have preached unto you, unless ye have believed in vain. For I delivered unto you first of all that which I also received, that Christ died for our sins according to the Scriptures, and that he was buried, and that he rose again the third day according to the Scriptures. This is why he died. This is what this is all about. But people stop and don't think about it. And I just don't understand that. But they don't want a God. They don't want to have somebody that's over authority over them. And I'm glad I have someone over me, watching out for me and taking care of me. I need all the help I can get. But we go back to Luke chapter 23, and we want to go through this chapter here of his crucifixion. You can go to any of the Gospels. They've all got little bits and pieces to put in it, but I'm just going to go with this one. Luke chapter 23, and we'll start in verse 23. And they were insisted with a loud voice regarding that he might be crucified, and the voice of them and the chief priests prevailed, and Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. I'm not going to, but remember that verse for next week, because that verse popped out on me. But I'll leave that alone, or I'll be into next week's Sunday school lesson. And he released unto him that seditious murderer was cast into prison, whom they had desired, but they delivered Jesus to their will. And as they led him away, they laid hold upon one Simon, a Cyrenian, coming out of the country, and on him they laid the cross, that he may bear it after Jesus. I'm going to stop real quick here. So Pilate released, I forgot his name. They released somebody, and I've heard a message about that. You know, who paid for who got you released, or something to that effect. But I thought about this, where they grabbed this Simon to carry the cross. You know, I've heard lots of different things, but also know in the Scriptures it said that the Romans would, if they didn't want to carry their burden, they'd grab somebody and say, hey, you're going to carry this for me. And you were required to carry it by the Roman law 1 mile. Well, after they had beat Christ, they had scourged him, beat him and the soldiers themselves had beat him, put the thorns on his head and beat on that. And basically, he'd been beat up pretty bad. I could see these Roman soldiers going, I ain't carrying that cross. Get him to do it. I could see them doing it. You know, that's people. That's the way we would do it. But here they had him carry the cross. And starting verse 27, and there followed him a great company of people, and of the women which bewildered and lamented him. And he said, and Jesus turned unto them, daughters, and said, daughters of Jerusalem, weep not for me, but weep for yourselves and your children. For behold, the days are coming in which they shall say, blessed are the barren and the wombs that never bare, and the paps that never gave suck. Then shall they begin to say unto the mountains, fall on us, and the hills cover us. For if they do these things on a green tree, what shall they be done on a dry? I think this was kind of neat. Even though those soldiers said he ain't gonna make it, he had enough awareness about him to turn around, talk to these ladies, and give them comfort. These are probably the ladies that took care of him, that we don't know their name. I do a devotion on those ladies, that they took care of him out of their own what they had of their own house to take care of their own family. They also took care of making sure that Jesus' clothes were clean. They had plenty to eat. There was people that took care of him. I believe these women, that could have been these women. But he had enough awareness about him to say, hey, don't worry about me. This has all been, even though you're someone is trying to comfort you right then, you don't take it, you don't really receive it good till later on, when you really see what they're trying to tell you. And I thought this was just kind of neat, that Jesus was strong enough and had enough awareness about him that he prophesied to them. And continuing, and there were also 2 malefactors led with him to be put to death. I wonder about this. I wonder if this was they were going to crucify somebody. Somebody was going to be put to death today. These 2 guys were up for it. And I wonder if the one they released could have been one of them that they were going to release, or going to be crucified at the same time. That yet the Jews, when they hollered, they wanted somebody else released. That, I hope I'm making that plain, that there was, one of the malefactors was going up to be put to death, and so was the one they released, but then this other one was grabbed instead. I don't know. You just kind of wonder how all those things were that happened by chance. It wouldn't happen by chance because one of them needed to be there. We'll read that on here in a few minutes. And when they were come to the place which is called Calvary, there they crucified him and the malefactors, one on the right hand and the other on the left. I love this verse. And then said Jesus, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. I tell you what, when I read that, I think of my failures of forgiving people. When I get aggravated at people, or people just do you dirty. These people are killing him. And he had enough. He said, forgive them. That's the way we ought to be. No matter what happens to us, this is what we ought to be. And I think about the other people that were around that heard him say this. And I think Stephen may have been one of them. Because when they stoned Stephen, what did Stephen say? Lord, forgive them. And who was there? Paul was there. Paul may have been here. But it hit Paul. Paul, I believe he heard something. He heard what Stephen said. But I tell you what, that's hard to do. We continue. And they parted his raiments and cast lots, and the people stood beheld, holding, and the rulers also with them derailed him, saying, He saved others, let him save himself, if he be the Christ, the chosen of God. And the soldiers also mocked him, coming to him and offering him vinegar, and saying, If thou be the King of the Jews, save thyself. And the subscription also was written over him in the Greek and in Latin and in Hebrew, This is the King of the Jews. I think it's kind of funny because in other scriptures it's written that the chief priests and elders, they didn't like that. Don't put that up there. And I love what Pilate said. What I have written is written. Go away. You bugged me enough today. But it's the truth. It's the King of the Jews, but not of this world. And continue. And one of the malefactors which were hanging railed on him, saying, If thou be Christ, save thyself and us. But the other answered, rebuking him, saying, Dost not thou fear God, seeing thou art the same condemnation? And we indeed justly, for we receive the due reward of our deeds, but this man hath done nothing amiss. I think that is kind of interesting. If you read other scriptures, it says that both of them at one time were mocking him. You know, and then one, like I said back here over in the first part of the chapter, was he supposed to be there? But yet this man was supposed to be there at that time because it opened his eyes. Because you really think about it, he's dying for being a thief. He's been caught too many times stealing, and he knows, I deserve what I'm getting. And that's when he asked Jesus in verse 42, and he said unto Jesus, remember me when thou comest into thy kingdom. And Jesus said unto him, verily I say unto thee, today shalt thou be with me in paradise. And this malefactor was not talking about the kingdom of this world, because when Jesus was before Pilate, he says, if my kingdom was of this world, my people would be they would be fighting. But since it's not of this world, they're not fighting. I kind of wonder, how did this malefactor know all this? You know, but you think about it, when you're being burdened, I'm thinking of the day I was saved. There's a lot of scriptures I remember in that time frame because God was opening my eyes to things. And I think I just put it in here. Wasn't sure where to put it, but I remember whenever I was saved. I remember when I was younger, Brother Clark had preached a meeting, and I was very convicted. And he talked to me that night at home, and he asked me, he said, do you believe Jesus died for you? Yeah, I did. But it was up here. And he told me, don't stop saying that. And he told me to keep saying it. I realized why later, because then you would hear it. And I remembered that. And I did a few times that night before I went to bed. But I remember the day that I was saved. I heard it. Because the preacher that was talking to me goes, do you believe God can lie? No. Well, he read some scriptures. And he said, you know, Christ died for you. But then it got real personal. Because then it's like, Lord, you said if I confess my sins, you'd save me. You can't lie. But then I realized what Brother Clark said. Do you believe Christ died for you? Then I heard it. Just like when I ask why people, where's your God? Their God is in 4 or 5 different places. My God came to do a job for me. I think that day it was like, this whole Bible is written for him coming, and yet he came just for me. All this that's written down here is just for me. It was for you too, but it got personal that day. I'd never seen that. And that's where those words that keep saying, do you believe that? I believed it up here. Then it was moved. God put it in my heart. And then it was like, wow, he did. Just for me. And we'll continue on here. Verse 44. And it was about the 6th hour, and there was darkness over all the earth until the 9th hour. And the sun was darkened, and the veil of the temple was rent from in the midst. I think that is so neat. I've always wondered, and I've finally, that scripture says the whole world was dark. Even though it was dark on part of the earth, there was no moon either, because the sun didn't shine. So it was total, the stars were gone, And in this time frame, Dad's radio program was, about what was coming. The Lord was facing his prayer. This time frame was what I think Jesus. This is where Jesus took on my sins. This is where his Father said, "I can't face you." This is where him and God, if you could separate them, this is where they separated. And how do you feel sometimes when you get separated from God? You feel really, it's not a great feeling. Even though you're saved and you're not connected, you're not where you need to be. It gets you. But when you get back into it, boy, it's a happy time. But you never, one thing, even though you may not be where you ought to be in God's will, you don't lose that peace. That's the thing that's the best, because he's still working on you. But then verse 47, and when Jesus had cried with a loud voice, "Father, unto my hands I commend thy spirit." And also in John, I'm not sure, I got it written down here somewhere. John said that John 19:30, and it said here, Jesus said, "It is finished." That means it's all done. Everything that's supposed to be has been completed. My sins at that point in time were done. Even though they were forgiven, even though I hadn't committed them, it was already done. And having said this, he gave up the ghost. He gave it up. He bowed his head and gave up the ghost. We don't do that. We just die. I mean, it's taken from us. But continue on. And now when the centurion saw what was done, he glorified God, saying, "Certainly this was a righteous man." And all the people that were come together in the sight beheld the things which were done, smote their breasts, and returned. I think here, this is where a lot of people, when God prayed over here in 34, he said, "Forgive them." I think this is where a lot of people's eyes were starting to get opened. I don't know that, but when all this was done, it was different. Nobody had died on the cross like that. The whole world didn't go dark when other people were crucified. But I'm going to skip ahead for time. All this was done because the Jews, the chiefs and the elders didn't like him. I don't know. But in Matthew chapter 27, Matthew 27 and verse 62. Yeah, Matthew 27. Verse 62. I think it's, all this was done so that, well, for my sins, but the Jews were thinking of other things to get away, get rid of this guy. He's causing too much trouble in our religion, stirring up too much trouble. And we'll start in verse 62. Now the next day, following the day of preparation, the chief priests and the Pharisees came unto Pilate and said, "Sirs, we remember that this deceiver said, while he is yet alive, after 3 days I will rise. Command therefore that the scepter be made sure unto the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal them away, and say unto the people, he is arisen from the dead. So so the least error should not be worse than the first. And Pilate said unto them, ye have a watch, go your way, make it sure as you can. So they went and made the sepulchre sure, and sealed the stone, and set a watch. I think verse 34 is kind of, it's the whole scene is kind of shaky to me. I don't know. It's just, it seems so, I don't know how to put it to words, but these guys were so worried about what they just did. All right, we finally got rid of him. Now we got something worse to do. Think about, because this guy said he was going to rise, and I'm not sure how to take what they said. I'm trying to find it again. So the least error should be worse than the first. So it's like, okay, we messed up, but now we've messed up. I'm not sure what I think about all those words, but I know but they wanted to make sure that, okay, he's dead, he isn't going to rise again. But when you go over to chapter 28, verse 11, Jesus arose the third day. The women went in, they found him. The two angels were there to, I guess it was angels. They said, hey, he's not here. Why you seek the living among the dead? And then verse 11, here in chapter 28, now when they were gone, behold, some of the watch came unto the city, and showed unto the chief priests all things which were done. And when they were assembled unto the elders, and had taken counsel, they gave large money unto the soldiers, saying, Say ye, his disciples came by night and stole him away while we slept. And if it comes to the governor's ear, we will persuade him and secure you. So they took the money and did as they were told. And this saying is common, reported among the Jews unto this day. You see this common until this day. There's some of those scriptures, until it was written or whatever. Some of those places, they say this place is still there. But this is actually still today. But I think it's kind of neat. There will be a day when the Jews and a lot of people that believe he's gonna come are gonna see him. It's been written. But I thought it was pretty neat that these chief priests and elders, they paid large sums of money to these soldiers. Say this. I wonder if they took the stone and rolled it away before they sealed it to make sure he was in there. I mean, we know what really happened. But then, here these guys are, and these soldiers, they knew the truth. They knew the truth, but yet some lied. But then I think, isn't it Paul that preached to some of the soldiers that said, be satisfied with your wages? I believe this whole thing touched the world. And what's wild is, even though people put Christ in a manger, and that's where they stay, on a cross, or they say he rose, but they do nothing more with him, there's a whole lot more to it. And it's really amazing that even our calendars say AD and after death and before death, and they're trying to change that. I mean, they just don't want a God. They don't want anybody over authority. We can see that today. But this has been a blessing to me to think about, where is my God? And I didn't even get to it, but Stephen, he recognized he said where God was when he died. He said, I see the Son of God standing at the right hand of the Father. And I think it was neat. No one's looked and seen the Father or the Son when they're on their throne. And yet he was dying. But that's where my God is. And it won't be long, my God will be coming back to get me. But just continue to pray for me. And remember verse 25 of Luke. And Pilate, give sentence. I thought about that. Pilate had no power. Just put that in there. Pilate had no power, and Jesus told him. And I think that's my next study, is looking at that in my lesson. But we'll be dismissed with a word of prayer. Brother Cecil, can you dismiss us, please?